Given a list of monomials, we will often want to find out their greatest common factor. That is, the common factor with the highest possible degree and the largest possible coefficient. So, for example, if we have the monomials 6x to the fourth, 3x squared y, and 9x squared y cubed, their greatest common factor, abbreviated GCF, is 3x squared. How do we know that? Well, 6x to the fourth is 3x squared times, what do I need to multiply by 3 to get 6? Well, I need to multiply by 2. What do I need to multiply x squared by to get x to the fourth? I need to multiply by an additional x squared. 3x squared y, well, that's going to be 3x squared times, what do I need to multiply 3 by to get 3? Well, 1. I don't need to put in a coefficient 1. X squared times what is x squared? Again, 1. All I need to multiply by is the y. And finally, 9x squared y squared. That'll be 3x squared times, what would I need to multiply that by? 3 times 3 is 9. X squared times y squared is x squared y squared. So we can see that 3x squared is a common factor because we can write each monomial as 3x squared times something. How do we know that 3x squared is the greatest common factor? Well, we know that 3x squared is the greatest common factor because these remaining monomials have no factors in common. Remember, we discussed previously how to recognize the factors of a monomial. The factors of a monomial are just the things that we see multiplied together. So, a factor of a monomial could be a factor of the coefficient, or it could be one of the variables that we see. Okay. So now we know what a greatest common factor looks like. How do we actually figure out what it is? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. We're going to see in this example how we would have found out about the 3x squared. First, we're going to take each coefficient and factor it into primes, so that the factors of the coefficients are as easy to see as the factors of the variable parts. So 6, that's going to be 2 times 3. 3 is already prime, we don't need to do anything with that. And 9, that's 3 squared. Right, 3 times 3. So 2 copies of the number 3 multiplied together. Okay. And now we can tell just by looking what the greatest common factor is. Here's what it's going to be. For each prime number or variable, the greatest common factor has the lowest power appearing in any of our monomials. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so 2 appears in my first monomial, but nowhere else. If something doesn't appear, it has the 0th power. So in my greatest common factor, I'll have 2 to the 0. Next, 3. 3 to the first appears in one monomial, 3 to the first appears in the next one, and 3 squared appears in the next one. The lowest power of 3 that appears is 3 to the first. So 3 to the first is going to appear in my greatest common factor. What about x? I've got x to the fourth, x squared, and x squared. The lowest power of x is x squared, so x squared is going to appear in my greatest common factor. And finally, y. I have y to the 0, y to the first, and y to the third. The lowest power is 0, so y to the 0 appears in my greatest common factor. Okay, 2 to the 0 is 1, y to the 0 is 1. So I just have 3x squared as my greatest common factor, which we already saw worked. Let's see another example. Suppose we want to find the greatest common factor of these 3 monomials: 12x cubed y, 8x squared y squared, and 20x to the fourth y to the third. Our first move is going to be to factor the numbers. 12, that's 3 times 4. 4 is 2 times 2. 8, that's 2 times 4. And 4 is 2 times 2. And 20. That's 4 times 5. 4 is 2 times 2. So let's see. My 12, that's going to be 2 squared times 3. And then I've got an x cubed y. My 8, that's going to be 2 to the third. And then I've got x squared y squared. And my 20, that's going to be 2 squared times 5. And then I've got x to the fourth, y to the third. Okay, so going through the factors. 2 appears in each monomial. Its lowest power is 2. So I'll have 2 squared. 3 only appears in the first monomial. I'll have 3 to the 0. X appears in all 3. The lowest power is 2, so I'll have x squared. Y appears in all 3. The lowest power is 1, so I'll have y to the first. And then 5 only appears in the last one. I'll have 5 to the 0. These 0 with power factors you don't need to write down, as long as you know you didn't forget about them. What did we end up with here then? 2 squared, that's 4. X squared, y. Our greatest common factor is going to be 4x squared y.